Hello and welcome back to Car Design Dialogues Asia. And our next panel session is Mobility in the Megacity. Now, rapid urban development has brought with it issues around sustainability, public health, quality of life, and of course, transportation. How do we navigate this new urban age? And what does this mean for the future of automotive design? Automated transport, autonomous driving, vertical mobility concepts, the list of potential solutions to one of the principal challenges of our times keeps on growing. And here to explore what the future might look like is Usha Raghavachari, who's lab director at D-Ford London, Melbourne, Sao Paulo, and that's part of the Ford Motor Company, and Lou Tick, who is founder and CEO of XEF. Hi, guys.
Okay.
Hi everybody.
Good to have you with us. Now, I suppose it might be a good place to start for you to sort of explain a little bit about what you guys do. And I'm going to start with you, Usha. You've got an extraordinarily long job title, but perhaps you could explain a little bit about what your work is concerning at D-Ford.
Yeah, would love to, James. And thanks for the opportunity. Excited to be here with you both today. So I'm the lab director of D-Ford in London, Melbourne and Sao Paulo. So I have this wonderful intercontinental gang. And D-Ford actually is Ford's human-centered design organization. It's in basically a small team of designers from lots of different disciplines: software design, product design, new business model design, engineers and marketing folks. Our mission is super simple, actually, to deeply understand the needs of the customers that we're trying to serve as a business across the world. And also think about the future context in which they're going to be living in 5, 10, 15 years' time, and then come up with amazing new ideas that hopefully transforms the future of Ford, but also has a really positive impact on the world around us.
Wonderful. And Lou Tick, XEF is an interesting name for a company. You're coming at this from a slightly different angle, almost innovative, but also kind of a bit more traditional work. Tell me about your company.
Okay, it's also a pleasure to be here and to meet both of you. Actually, XEV, we actually do come into the automotive from a slightly different angle. We want to marry the automotive with the latest internet technology and big data, because we believe, user experience is becoming one of the key factors for the future. Not just for success, it's also for the way that's going to change the automotive and then the people reaction, to the automotive too. So we are actually using AM, additive manufacturing solution, for building the automotive part, and our car is actually partially built by the AM. And then one of the key benefit for the AM is, it can have continuous iteration. You can changing the automotive, the car part from the feedback from the people, and then the different scenario of the user. And then this, you can make the car continuously to upgrade, update according to the people's needs and the people's reaction. And also at the same time, I think that is one of the best way to connect to the internet and then the big data. So we are trying to use the new way of building car, and then try to make this as a solution platform. And then in the future, perhaps, apart from the XEV ourselves, we can also provide this platform to any other third party.
It's an interesting idea, this idea of kind of continually upgrading the car. One of the things that's been a big discussion outside of automotive is how we can reuse or revamp existing old buildings and make them fit for the 21st century. But this is kind of one of the few companies who are car companies who are attempting to do this with the automotive.
I do think so. There are possibilities because what we are. The company was founded in 2017, so been 5 years from now. And then from this 5 years of a research, and we experience a lot of a possibility. When I say, we do helping some, let's say, third-party clients, to rebuild their car part, which is the pieces maybe already out of the market supply. And then as long as you got the data, the beautiful thing about the AM is as long as you can build the data, the day after you can have the pieces. I mean, so the lead time is very short, and then you just not need to have a large quantity upfront, upfront for the investment. There's no tooling required. So it's a very flexible solution. My answer is that the possibility is there.
Sure. Does this I mean, you must have sort of lots of projects that you're working on to tackle these kind of mobility issues we're having, but does the data resonate with you like it does with Lutic? Is it being that's the key to some of the potential solutions?
No. Sorry.
It's okay. Was that it for me, James? Or
that was for you. I was trying to.
Yeah. So yeah, it's super important. As I said, in D4, we spend a lot of our time thinking about the future and thinking about how the lives of our customers are going to change, right? In that future context. And the one thing is certain, like the speed of change that we're experiencing right now is just going to get faster and faster and faster. So we're spending a lot of time thinking about connectivity and connected vehicles. And obviously, with that compute power sitting behind us, all of that data coming into our vehicles, our ability to better understand usage for our customers, either commercial customers in a business context or retail customers in a private context, we're going to be able to create more tailored solutions for them. So if you think about the way I like to describe it is, if you think about Spotify as a platform, let's put it into normal world for a minute.
Yeah.
You and I, James, might have very, very different tastes in music, and we have a very unique experience on Spotify. Yet the platform that sits behind it is one platform. And so as we're working through ideas, we're thinking about how do we create these new vehicles that are going to become not just physical platforms, but digital platforms as part of a bigger kind of connected ecosystem. And then we're using that data to really tailor solutions that either increase productivity for our commercial customers or increase fun for our retail customers, right? And we can do that, as Lutic was saying, we can do that at pace, and we can change it through our ability to provide over-the-air updates. And it's our ambition to do that more and more in the future. Yeah.
Lou, did you want to jump in there?
Sorry.
Did you want to jump in onto that point, or
I am totally agree with Wusha. The point of view, that is the main. I think the connectivity, the way how people, data, automotive product need to connect together with, fluidly is the key point. For the future automotive, because no designer. I'm actually from design background, but no designer can foresee really. In the past, maybe yes, because of the technology was changing so slowly. But right now, technology changing so fast. People's the social behavior changing so fast. You don't really know I have two kids. I don't really know how they will. What they will use. How they will act in the social life when they were growing up. And you really cannot so predictable. The future market and user scenarios are not so predictable. So you gotta be flexible to get to adapt yourself with a flexible manufacturing way to produce or manage the product with data coming in. You got data, load of data coming in, and then maybe from month to month, season to season, you can find out people are changing. You have to be able to, let's say to follow the change and adapt your product and to get a very successful one, to the market and for the user.
Interestingly, I think there's been, if you talk to or watch any sort of discussion with urbanists, hardcore urbanists, they will see the car as the antithesis of the future smart city. They would rather they didn't exist. But I wonder what role you think the car could play in the solution to some of our mobility challenges, Lou. And you can jump in on that as well afterwards. But yeah, sticking with you, Lou, for a minute.
I think for the smart city, because I do actually connect to a few smart city projects from Italy and China. And then the way I see the smart city, car being, I can see the car being an object of, it's like a house. I mean, the people are using the space for their private timing. I mean, their leisure. And then if a car can contribute the same function, so the time in car is no longer the time for wasting for travel. You can be counted as a working, can be counted as a partial. I mean, private timing. If the car have a more function. We actually had some project. To turn the car into autonomous driving. So the moment the people are actually step in the car, it counts as a working hour. So from place to place, we can actually work on the car when the car drive by itself. And then also the car have a multifunction. The screen can, the windshield is actually screened, so you can actually turn into becoming information display, or even watch movie, and so people can actually enjoy their private time in the car. So being in the car is a part of their life. That is so the car is no longer just being and tools traveling people from point to point. You have a lot more function than that, and that's just a kind of an iceberg of the fundamental stuff. Everything was connecting with the data. You actually know what people need, and then you are doing the product. The product with the function for the need of the people, and it's actually quite precise. From the data, they don't tell lies. They're really precise. What kind of people, age. Sex, what they actually like looking for, they give you a lot of information, to make the right product for them. But you have to be flexible because people are not needing the same thing for everyone.
Anusha.
Yeah, thank you, James. Yeah, so many thoughts. So we've done a lot of work with cities all over the world in D-Ford and in Ford Motor Company, and again, just looking at everything from a human-centered design lens, and what is the design challenge? What are the problems that we're trying to solve? We look at the world and we look at cities as customers, right? So if you think about the different layers of customer in an urban environment, obviously we have the end customer, whether that's a retail customer or actually a business, so a commercial customer. Commercial customers are trying to move goods around the city and, move people around the city. Retail customers have very different needs, emotional needs. I want to communicate success. So I just moved back, from China. I lived in Shanghai for 3 years. And so many of car buyers on the China roads are buying a car for the very first time. And it's a really big moment in their lives, right? So cities are not all the same. Customers are not all the same. And so I think for us, what we're trying to do is kind of unwrap and unravel the different needs that not just those end customers have, but if you consider the city as a customer, so the city has motivations, the city has local challenges and objectives and ambitions. If I think about London, so I live in London, London wants to be seen as a very progressive, environmentally conscious, future-facing city on the global stage, right? So there's a lot of motivations that the city would have as well. So unwrapping and unpacking all those elements, but also reflecting, and we've done work looking across cities around the world, because of course not all cities are the same. So some cities have been born long after the car was created. And so infrastructure is very different. So if I think about cities in the US, the huge sprawling metropolises where, you can drive right into the center and find easy parking. If I'm going into the center of London, I would not get in my car, right? I tend to use my car when I'm heading out of the city. So grouping cities together, whether they were born before the car or after the car, whether they have public transport infrastructure, offering other ways for customers to travel around the city, or they don't, in which case, if you want to move and people want to move themselves and their goods around the city, that sometimes in some cities around the world, there is very few other options. And so we need to think about all of those elements: progressiveness, attitude, affluence of the city, ambition of the city, infrastructure, just lots and lots of elements to consider. And then, I mean, one additional thought maybe is, I feel sometimes in the industry, we get a little bit, lost in the technical solutions, right? We have all this amazing technology and it's a gift. But we almost sometimes look to solve problems with technology, right? We have this amazing tech and we're looking for a problem to solve. And, our approach in D4 is very much the opposite of that, because I've seen many things fail because they make perfect technical sense, right? So if you think about it, why aren't our cities full of tiny little 2-seat, 1-seat electric cars, right? They would make a lot of sense, reducing pollution and congestion and, technically make sense, rationally make sense, because we don't take into account the human, right? Because we look at those little tiny cars and say, oh, they don't look very safe. I don't want to put my children in that car, right? But also in many parts of the world, and China's a great example of that, size matters, right? Because I'm communicating to other people that I'm successful, that I have a good job. And for the gentleman in China, I'm a good marriage prospect, right? It's a really important factor of consideration. And so for not thinking about those emotional needs and those human needs, I worry a little bit sometimes that, maybe, we try and use technology as a way of potentially solving things all the time, and it's not always a solution. So maybe I'll pause there. But I could talk all day, James, on this subject.
There's a great
deal. Very good point. Very good point.
Yeah, Lucy, well, I was just picking up on what Usha said there about this idea of cultural differences and the needs of peoples. I mean, how does this feed into the work that you're doing?
No, I mean, to be quite honest, we were excited about that because there are a lot of differences between culture to culture, place to place, city to city. For example, the mega city in China, the conjunction is massive. You travel 20 kilometers a day, it took you maybe 3 hours from one way to, the two-way. So it's really difficult. If you go into Europe, for example, I lived in Italy for more than around 15 years, and you really don't have this level of conjunction in most of the city, sometimes in Rome and Milan. So there are very different scenarios for the requirement, for the requirement of the car. And then people are actually suffer by the traffic conjunction. So when there is a suffer, you want to buy the car, fine. In China, we should know really well about the Chinese culture. Size does matter. But right now, for the new generation, they actually don't have car before. Car is like a communicative product, from you to outside. But right now, for the new generation, when they were born with car, so their prospect is different. So the perspective is different. They actually see car as a toy. And as a tools, like we see bicycle in the past. So they don't really give so much, luxury, content to the car. So they really become really physical, really, down on earth. They really take the just physical part of the car. And then in this, you need to give them different products. And then with the people do need the size, you need to give them a different product. And then so in this case, means they are very, they are very different needs, and then require and demand from different market and different group of the people. Then you pretty much, you can't really have a commodity product to have a one solve all the problems. So you need to really have to do into niche market if you want to be successful in the future, to have a need, understand the niche need, and then give them the right product. And then maybe you can have an electronic platform, common electronic platform, but on top of the platform a very large, a wide range of different products to match different needs. And this actually, in the way, it requires the change of the way of manufacturing the car. No longer 3 years development. That's too long. You have to be a very short, fast way of making the car, the product. And that's why that's actually what we are doing, the XCV is doing.
There are a few questions that come to mind there, well, actually several questions. This kind of rapid switching out of cars obviously poses problems environmentally in terms of, its carbon footprint. But there's also a question that Usha touched on there. We are dealing with, infrastructure that can be a barrier to certain solutions. And I wondered just very quickly how XEV is tackling the infrastructure challenge, like in terms of the lack of charging points for electric cars, because we know that they certainly improve air quality. I'm not sure if they improve congestion, but air quality is a huge issue. We're behind in London for sure. That we don't have enough of them. But Lou, I wonder if you could tell a little bit about how you see that challenge being solved. The idea of charging a car, just making it easier, basically.
Actually, I do think the energy refueling by charging isn't the only solution, or isn't the solution. There are too many obstacles by the government, by the available space in the city, by the neighborhood surrounding. And in Europe, this matter become even more dramatic because a historical city don't really allow you to touch the ground, and then there's many obstacles for the charging point. My opinion, for XEV or our car is we have a battery swapping solution. So I do thinking we get all the headache, on the highway, fast charging work. Inside the city, especially on the old infrastructure, on the old building. We stole the old building to put enough charging point there. Basically, we see it doesn't work, and swapping may be an intermediate solution for now, next 5 years maybe, and then you might go to the remote charging. So the car will charge them remotely, without connection. That may be the ultimate level, and then the energy, the battery density will get higher. So you can have the car per charge, you can go to 1,000, 2,000 kilometer range, and then there are new solutions. For that. So right now we are on probably the level 1 of the electrification of the mobility world. But honestly, I do really think if we have a so aggressive target to have an electric car for 2025 globally, only depend on charging, it's not possible.
Mm. Usha, do you have thoughts there? I'm sure you do.
So many thoughts.
Yes.
So I've spent a lot of time working in the EV space, James, as well. So I think for me, again, just bringing it back, a lot of what we look at in D4 are what are the challenges that customers have in their mind, right? So, and you touched on a couple of them. So accessibility to charging is a big question when people are thinking about moving to electric vehicles. Charging time, how long it takes, the complexity of setting up charging, because, and again, just bringing it back to the urban context that you're interested in. If I'm in suburban America, I have this huge driveway and probably a double garage. I can get someone to come in and set all of that up for me. It's relatively easy. If I'm right in the middle of London or the middle of Shanghai, I'm likely to live in an apartment. I may or may not even have a car parking space. And so cities, as they're trying to figure out how to reduce pollution and improve air quality, but also enable electrification to take off, have to consider sort of a whole combination of public, private parking electric solutions and charging solutions. So that adds a whole layer of additional complexity, I think, when you bring it into an urban context. As Lou was talking about, there's lots of technology advances that make the speed of charging better, but actually there's lots of other alternative ways of charging your vehicle. So we're looking at wireless charging, robot charging, fast charging, and all sorts of different types of flavors of charging. And it's no wonder, customers, when they start to do the initial research, their heads start to explode, and it's super difficult. So part of the challenge, I think, for us as automotive brands, but also the industry and the world at large, because all of this is going to make the world a better place, right, is to also consider how are we educating customers, how are we communicating to customers as we manage this gigantic transition. And also, how can we kind of cross that barrier between kind of private and public? And so we're testing ideas, for example, at the moment about sharing your charge points. So how do we make all these individual charge points that may be private charge points available to the grid and to the network as well? And so think of it like Airbnb for charging, right? So at the relevant points, if I'm out all day, could I make my charge point available to commercial customers who perhaps are doing work in my street during the day? So just as a provocation, so many different many different solutions available, many different technologies available. But once again, I think it's just keeping ourselves very focused on what are the problems that we're trying to solve. And I think the problems for electrification at the beginning of the journey are going to be very different to when things become much more mature. So Jim Farley, our CEO, recently announced we're investing something like, $30 billion now in electrification in the next few years, because we think 40%, 50% of our vehicles globally are going to be electrified. I mean, that's an astonishing number. So how are we going to get the infrastructure ready, right? If every company is thinking like this, and we're seeing customers respond very positively.
Yes, and I think that we're starting to get to the end of the session. So I think that does feed into something I've been thinking about, though, in terms of infrastructure scaling up, because there's another thing literally hovering on the horizon. And you keep seeing it being announced, and Honda have just made an announcement today about their work with Aaron, I think it is, but this is the idea of air taxis and air mobility. Now, it is a really interesting issue, and it does get sort of, not laughed at, but there are skeptics. There's a healthy amount of skepticism about how realistic it is in the short to medium term. But I would love to hear your thoughts on the idea of air taxis and air mobility. Lutik, maybe you could start, and we'll finish with Usha.
Definitely this idea, like in the film Fifth Element, you can have a car flying around, you can have levels of on the different height, for different kind of level. But ideally, technologically, I think you got solution already there exist. I saw a few startup company, even Airbus, they have their solution. Xiaopeng Automotive, they have their solution. Already actually see the prototype and the flying point to point. The founder was in everything. So the technology is there, but it just how to accept that solution is not just a private company or customer demands driving. There are governments on top. If the government, give the policy, give you the green light to do it, probably at the end they will. But how long is it going to wait for that? GE is for sure. It are one way of one of the maybe the right way for the future, to save some traffic, because there are more space or only on the ground surface. But just it probably will have the kind of a leading city to try the solution like Dubai, or maybe one or two, and then to showcase that solution is a workout, and then it's working, and then it's affordable by. If you want to scale it up, you have to make sure it's affordable by the general public, and then this is a long way. I think to prove that it work out, but I do believe it's a beautiful solution.
James, so I hope so. So I'm laughing because actually I think a lot of science fiction becomes science fact, and one thing I know for certain is the world is changing just far more rapidly than we could have ever anticipated, although it never feels like it when you're right in the middle of it. So I think for urban environments, we'll see a whole host of solutions, and they will be different across different infrastructures and different parts of the world, supported by different governments in different ways. And I think we're going to see bikes and electric scooters and cars and maybe even air taxis as part of the mix of moving people, moving goods, and solving those problems that we've been talking about today.
No, that's kind of apt sort of blue sky thinking, if I'm going to make some kind of terrible pun on air taxis. Okay, wonderful. Thanks very much, guys. That's probably about all we have time for today. There's so much more to talk about. I'd love to do another session on this about countryside, because that's a whole different thing about mobility that needs to be discussed. But for now, thanks so much for joining us, Lou Tick, founder and CEO of XEV, and Usha Raghavachari, D Ford, Ford Motor Company, and London, Sao Paulo, and I think it's Melbourne. I'm not sure. Thanks very much, guys.
Thank you, James.
Okay, thank you. It's a pleasure to join.